Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SourceForge Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Bo Hamilton, Senior Editor and Multimedia Producer here at SourceForge, the world's most visited software comparison site where B2B software buyers compare and find business software solutions. Today, we're talking with Fritz Schulze, founder and the original programmer of Collect by Comtech Systems. They offer a comprehensive software solution designed for receivables management and debt recovery. The platform offers robust features for tracking payments, managing customer accounts, automating workflows, and generating detailed financial reports with plenty of customization options to cater to businesses of all sizes. So to talk more about these solutions they offer and more about the company, let me introduce Fritz Schulze. Fritz, welcome to the podcast. Glad you can join us.
Thanks very much, Bo. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. I provided a really general overview of your company, but there's, of course, lots more to go over. Could you introduce yourself and give us your breakdown of what Collect offers?
Sure. I'm Fritz Schulze. I'm the founder and original creator of Collect, software for credit and collections. It's basically a CRM for third-party and first-party accounts receivable. It's a piece of code that's been around for 30 years and has been under development for a long time and is very advanced in many ways. We offer significant security, compliance, configurability, communications, and a super pay system, which offers flexible payment processor choices. We've got an API, and it basically amounts to an invoice to cash system.
Awesome. Okay, invoice to cash system. Well, I'm always impressed that a company of yours has been in business for 30 years. I think that's just a testament really to your consistent ability to deliver value to your clients. Looking back at the last 30 years or so, what really inspired you to create Collect, and how did you keep it relevant over the years?
It really was an opportunity I fell into. I was doing custom software development work, and this happened to be a startup collection agency here in Victoria that needed some work done. And I built the program, and then I started marketing it afterwards. And there was significant demand. And the big thing I found was listening to customer feedback. Different clients, while the feature sounds the same, very often they want it different. In very simple terms, one guy might want it blue and the other guy wants it green. It doesn't matter what it is. There were always differences in the way they're doing things. To a certain extent, it amounts to their magic sauce in their business, right? So one thing we did was make sure the program's extremely flexible so it's suitable to different ways of doing business, and that flexibility is done in such a way that people can upgrade with new versions of the software without being hamstrung by their customizations. So there's some differences there. And one reason we did that, and the whole system is built the way it is that we really feel that our clients should be independent if they want to. They shouldn't be married to a software developer. If they want, we offer tools and documentation and training in such a way that they can do everything themselves without having to lean on us. We also offer flexible and open third-party interfaces so that our users can choose the appropriate third-party service they need rather than being forced into one particular channel. So we're just a little bit different, and that's part of the reason I started it.
Nice. Yeah. So that's in the simplest of terms. There's a supply and demand, and you noticed that you could essentially offer a better solution set than what was out there at the time. Interesting. When you started your business, I imagine there was a plethora of different regulations to help clients stay compliant with. The one that comes to mind is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. It's a mouthful. I'm sure there's been more introduced over the past few decades you've had to accommodate to, especially outside of North America. But generally speaking, how does Collect ensure clients are compliant with the various regulations and requirements out there?
Ultimately, we've built a compliance engine that runs on top of everything and makes sure that we don't cross any boundaries that we shouldn't. It's flexible and robust and handles ultimately verifying that the details of the compliance are met through the various communication and payment channels. It's configurable. As you mentioned internationally, yes, absolutely. The US has one set of regulations. Different countries have different ones. Australia, for example, they measure calls per month, while the US is calls per week as far as regulations go. So minor details like that have to be paid attention to if you are looking to make a compliance engine. And then additionally, what we're seeing is that over time, of course, regulations will become more and more onerous. Governments typically don't get smaller. So we'll probably see more bureaucratization of things over time. And we see regulations heading from federal into state and even municipal levels. So the engine has to be able to manage those details. Uh, and we're also constantly updating based on current trends. For example, medical debt exclusions for credit reporting and similar details like that we manage and handle on an ongoing basis.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine regulations are kind of always going to be a challenge to stay on top of and you know keep keep aware of and help clients overcome and just stay compliant. But there's some other things that come to mind, like the mass adoption of various AI and automation tools that you have to keep pace with. Looking at the industry today, what would you say are the biggest challenges in debt collection, and how does Collect tackle them?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. There's been a lot of changes in the last 5 or 10 years. The pandemic had a big effect, and a lot of businesses, not only in debt collection, they're feeling a shakeout after the pandemic. Everybody's got issues with staffing. Certainly, you hear it all over the place. Here in this industry, we have increasing regulations, as we just talked about, and an increasing reliance and capability of technology, which is kind of being used and must be used to counter the other two issues. So ultimately, automation, compliance, and digital solutions are really pulling forward much more than the old technologies and the old ways of doing business. More texting, self-serve portals, AI collection bots, and things like that are helping move the industry forward. Uh, Also, with the technology, more and more people are segmenting workflows based on various criteria. And with some of this technology, volumes of accounts are possible with automation quite easily.
Now, yeah, just that has me curious about the rate of change. Like, have you noticed the rate of change increase more in the past 5 years or so than any other time in your business's history, or has it kind of been relative? Because I know the internet. You've been around since when the internet was really being widely adopted, so that was a big kind of a disruption. But how do you see that compared to nowadays with the AI tools and automation?
Well, the pace of change has always been frenetic. It's been ongoing, and people are developing as quickly as they can. With the AI, we're getting some assurances that development is going to go faster. Uh, and I can see that happening now. So the push is a pretty constant thing, but the technology is now allowing us to leapfrog, where previously it would take quite some time to build a piece of software. Now libraries are intact, or for example, the communication services our API makes available, and the payment services. Those things now are tools that are readily at hand, whereas 10 or 20 years ago, you'd have to build all that stuff yourself. So it's really the long history of product development and the depth of product, such as Collect, it's been around for a long time, exposing those things to lightweight front end tools, such as little apps on your phone and things like that. Those moves are much faster than they were before. And it's basically we've built on if you've done it right, you've got a solid foundation you're building on.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. It's there's always some new technology kind of being floated and hyped up, and so it's I'm always curious to hear your insights on the current state of technology, because obviously AIs, there's billions of dollars being flooded into the market. This new technology, we know it's quite disruptive and groundbreaking, and I liken it to the advent of the internet, just in terms of the change it's going to usher in. But that said, I also recognize that a lot of things get hyped up, and like maybe they're not going to pan out quite as we intend or expect. So yeah, just curious, and I'm glad that you're staying aware of it. I know like I mentioned, your business has been around for 30 years, which should give customers assurance that you're able to kind of weather any of the changes coming in the next few years, let alone the next decade or two. That being said, you're not the only debt collection software provider out there. The market seems like it's constantly growing and getting more competitive by the days and weeks. You mentioned the various regulations and workflow automations to stay on top of, among other things. But what else would you say makes Collect stand out from the competition?
Ultimately, the product itself is proven, robust, and it is scalable. Unlike many who are designed and maybe are suited for a particular size of market, Collect is flexible in that way. Collect has very deep features because of the number of years it's been around. We've had a lot of time to build a lot of stuff, and a lot of detail in there is quite remarkable. And the flexibility is one of the major things, the configurability that a client can go and set it up to work the way they want without requiring custom programming. Significant reporting capabilities as well, whether you want to use external tools, business intelligence tools to access the database, or the internal robust engine that Collect uses, which can output PDFs and emails and you name it, it can output. And that's all fully integrated with the payment system. Customization layers, which ease upgrades, unlike many other software. When clients build customizations, they can port those customizations to new versions without big changes. Another area where we're very strong is our service. We offer 24-hour service. We have offices in Canada, in Australia, in Europe, all with people trained over decades in this product. So they know how it works deeply and can help in very many ways. And one other area where we're different, and I touched on it earlier, is our openness. Many of our competitors restrict whether it's access to data or access to third-party vendors, services. We want to be open and make sure we have an open tool for our end users.
I like that. That's really important, having that open access. And then just generally speaking, the integrations and the scalability is huge, especially, in this industry, since there are just so many different platforms to work with. Having a centralized area to access data and view one's accounts is really important, to say the least. Can you talk more about how Collect integrates with other tools and systems that might already exist out there?
Ultimately, if you look at Collect, it's like a wheel, and Collect is the hub. And it's got a bunch of spokes reaching out, and those spokes are these third-party services. And if you look at a high level, imagine you're managing an account flow. You're dealing with, say, 10,000 accounts. How are you going to deal with them? What's the volume of the account? What's the dollar value? And how are you going to process that? So the higher value accounts may go to some service where they verify various things, whether it's addresses, names, phone numbers, and things like that. That might cost a penny per account or some number, right? Low volume accounts, you might not even bother. You may just send an email. Who knows? There are account flow processes that can change. And ultimately, Collect integrates these third-party services in a seamless way so that automation can be done. You can have accounts coming in, they may be segmented, automated processes go and touch them and behave in certain ways so that you can then communicate most effectively. And in an ideal world, you can receive payments without any interaction whatsoever through the use of text messaging, which then link to payment sites, and automatically the payment's taken.
Yeah, I like that wheel analogy. I always, I'm a visual person, so when I relate the physical, that analogy with your services, it kind of helps me visualize it more.
One other area we're working on is white labeling. So we're making it possible so that users don't have to necessarily sign up in any great significant way with a third-party service. It's already set up so that they can instantly use text messaging, for example, without any long process to sign up with some kind of service. That's most effective for the smaller operators. And in some cases, some operators can't afford to engage certain services. And by pooling these things as resources collectively through Collect, we're able to allow various services to be made available to smaller operators.
Okay. I imagine you're also adding various integrations to your platform all the time as time goes on. How often are you updating your software, and are there any new developments you're particularly excited about?
Interesting. Our development cadence is fairly rapid. We're outputting several times a year, new minor releases, and every few years we're releasing a major version. The development is ongoing, and at times we may develop specific features to accommodate some kind of target we've got. So it's not always a linear output that we've got. Some of the stuff that's really exciting is our API and how that's been used for numerous years. On an incremental basis, it's been developed incrementally and used more and more. Our payment processing is rather interesting. Unlike some, we are, in keeping with our principles of flexibility, we're making it possible that our end users can easily switch between payment processors without any kind of complications technically. And that's in order to allow them to optimize the payment processor that best suits their way of doing business. And an interesting thing, as I mentioned before, and this is probably the biggest thing, is our ability to blend channels so that, as I said, you can send a text with a link to a payment site. The consumer can click, make their payment, and it's all integrated, flows into the system using our API. And that's the point where that one payment, depending on the system, could actually be broken across multiple invoices if there are multiple invoices recorded in the system.
Okay. Yeah. So having that seamless experience is really important. I can totally see that. And also I can see how like you don't want to stick to a super rigid linear structure of releasing updates, right? Because you don't want to rush any particular feature out, get ahead of yourselves, especially when you're dealing with, customer data and just the natural nature of your industry. You want to be careful with releasing a stable, feature-rich product. Um, that said, I got to say, software updates are always exciting. As I'm a big mobile phone guy, that's kind of my background, and I'm always looking forward to the latest iOS and Android updates that sort of breathes new life into my devices. But sometimes there are also updates that are just security and bug fixes, which are kind of boring, but they're important. I have to recognize the importance of patching various vulnerabilities. And so speaking along those lines, data security, that plays a big role in debt collection. But really for any company working with user data, there's not a day that goes by, it seems, where a data breach or a ransomware attack isn't reported, it seems. So how are you ensuring Collect stays on top of the latest security practices and data trends to make sure customer data is safe?
It's done in many levels, and it's absolutely critical. Whether it's the physical plant, your office security, controlling who's coming in and out and what they're doing, then the machines in the office itself. It's a whole mess of things, where the data is stored, how it's stored. And it's documented. We've been HIPAA compliant for quite a number of years. We're now SOC 2, Type 2 certified. We do annual penetration testing. We work with a number of banks to make sure that we're good and solid at various occasions. Our development follows OWASP protocols. And if people are interested, they could request access to the Collect Trust Center to see the controls and reports in place.
Okay. Yeah. I'm glad you have the right importance and value of data security, because it really can make or break a company. It makes me think of, I don't know if you've heard of 23andMe, but completely different, business and industry than yours, but they lost like 98% of their value, all because of hackers gained access to personal information of millions of their clients and users. So it's really a remarkable downward spiral, and kind of is a great example of like, you should really put a serious level of importance on data security and privacy. Now, if clients have questions about data security practices, for example, or if they want to learn more about ways to get the most out of Collect, where might they go? Like, what kind of client support services do you offer?
Right off the bat, we've got 24-hour help online, of course, with training videos, very, very detailed, many, many years of development going into that help system, and it's used by most people frequently. We've got trained technicians around the world, as I mentioned earlier. We've got a helpline, and we typically use a ticket system where people can make requests, and then we work through them, typically in writing, to make sure that everything's organized and we know what we're doing. and the client knows what's going on. And we have a team of people who work on an ongoing basis, always serving customer requests. And those requests can vary from quality assurance issues where they've found some detail that we need to improve, or it could be they need a report or they need some data exchange built, or it may also move into programming where a client may have some idea which is generally useful in the industry, which is a way that we've been developing. We take customer requests, and then if it's a big request, lots of people want it, then we build it as time permits.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's great to hear. Yeah, customer service is a really fundamental pillar for any successful business. Nobody wants to be left in the dark, feeling like they're not getting value out of the product or service. And I like the fact that if a client has a way that they think that the UI could be improved or a feature could be added, they can reach out to you guys. I think that's pretty awesome. Now, as I come down to like the last few questions I have for you, I kind of want to circle back around to ask about the industry at large and like what's coming down the pipeline. Some of these points you covered, you already talked about the challenges you face, but I'm curious about the trends you're watching in the debt recovery sector and how you're working to keep up with them. What are some trends you're looking out for?
We're seeing there's going to be increasing regulations, whether it's federal, state, municipal, and it'll be increasing globally. We expect increasing security requirements as the world goes crazy. We also see a need for greater software flexibility, and the technology now is allowing us to engage far more with the software capabilities. We're seeing a big trend in consolidation of businesses. A lot of the older businesses, they look at the new regulations and the new security requirements, and they become a little bit onerous for some of the folks long in the tooth, and people are retiring, selling their businesses. So there's a consolidation in the industry. And this consolidation, there's still lots of debt out there, and it's being now managed more and more with automation and account segmentation. And to that end, we're integrating more and more with different third parties to help us with those things, whether it's AI and large language models, or third parties for scoring and skip tracing. So our goal is to tie all these various pieces together to offer a seamless consumer experience.
Okay. Well, that's a good answer. Yeah, there's a lot to keep an eye out on. You get the regulations, consolidation, and I always like to kind of float the idea of we're entering the era of efficiency, right? There's all these different automation and AI tools. It kind of relates to the consolidation you were talking about, just as human capital, human labor isn't quite as needed. I guess it shifts to more of a management role. But I think, as I've stated before, you have the right mindset to kind of keep weathering whatever's thrown your way, given the last 30 years of operating and all the changes that brought. I want to ask a few more questions that help us understand your perspective on the future of the industry. These always are some of my favorite to ask because they make for great short clips that can be shared online without necessarily all the context from this larger interview. So my first question for you, as a business leader, what's the most challenging decision you've had to make and what did you learn from it?
Yes, well, it's always challenging. Probably the biggest one is where to draw the line between speed and outputting quickly and quality. And you touched earlier on the rate of change, how that's increasing in some ways as time goes on. And so getting product out the door matters a lot. But I've been in the position where I rushed it out the door a little too fast. And no, don't do that. That's all I can say. Make sure you've got quality assurance in place. You've got things double checked and you've got people making sure everything's working the way it should be. It's part of the reason we're developing our API the way we are. It's incremental. We're working on one piece at a time. And then as it rolls out, we're making sure that works so that we're working on a solid foundation. So that as the pyramid grows higher and higher, it's actually based on something that will not fall down.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say it goes back to that release cycle we were talking about and the cadence. You don't want to get ahead of yourself. You don't want to push something that's not quite been tested and super robust because you don't want anything to break on clients and ruin that customer satisfaction element.
And it's a hard thing to hold off and to say no, right? Because you want to say yes, here it's available tomorrow, but reality dictates. So there's a minor issue, of course, but it's always a balance. You always have to find your way through somehow.
Very true. Now, there are also the cliche qualities of leadership that we're all aware of. I think of integrity, I think of confidence, I think of, great communication is a good element, a good characteristic of a good leader. But I'm curious to hear what qualities you think are essential for someone aspiring to be a leader in today's business world. What comes to mind?
Ultimately, I think you have to listen to your people. You have to listen. Uh, we're only here after 30 years because I work with good people. There's an excellent team at Comtech, and they're really the ones who are looking at where things are going and where we should be going. And together we make decisions. We talk about the options. We talk about the pressures we have, whether they're financial, whether they're client pressures, whether they're technology, regulatory. And then we're small enough that we can jump. We can make rapid leaps. So we can, where other systems may have to pedantically follow through, we're able to move pretty quickly. And we saw that with the regulations coming on board, where some of our competitors that simply weren't able to keep up. And it's been that way often with any of the technological changes, whether it was the move from DOS to Windows or the Y2K, you name it, or from any of these things. There's always a leap, and so ultimately you can't make those decisions yourself if you're really paying attention, because your people, all of them, if they're interested in what's going on, they're all digging deeply too. And so if you put all your heads together, it's really very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's good advice. And it just, listen to your people, and also just have good people in place, trust them, right? Because, that's really going to help you out at the end of the day. You have someone that's capable at their job, and so you can kind of manage other parts of the business. I think that's huge. Now, maybe that goes into my next question too, the answer you just provided. But is there one particular piece of advice you wish you could give yourself back when you first started this venture?
Don't get ahead of yourself. It does get back to outputting things before you're ready. And that goes in a lot of ways. Um, to use a hockey quote from Wayne Gretzky, try to figure out where the puck will be and skate there.
Yeah. Well, I want to, I want to ask as we wrap this up, I've got one more question. Where can people find out more about Collect and get in touch with you and your team?
They can reach us at www.collect.org. Loads of help there. You can reach us. All the contact information is there, and loads of information about the product itself.
Awesome. Collect.org. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk with us about Collect. I really appreciate it, Fritz.
Thanks, Bo. I really appreciate your time as well. Thank you very much.
Of course. Well, thank you all for listening to the SourceForge podcast. I'm your host, Bo Hamilton. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all of the upcoming B2B software related podcasts we have for you. I will talk to you in the next one.